This story is essentially just going to be, looking at your policy stances, how they set you apart from the other gentlemen who are in this race. So the question that I like to start with is just kind of an overarching one, which is what are the major issues in this election?
Well, I think there are three issues that we really have to focus on. The first is, of course, the economy, which is the one that's first and foremost in everybody's mind. And when we talk about the economy, we have to recognize that we're not just talking about bailing out Wall Street and taking care of the big boys. The real problem, I think, is here on Main Street. We need to make sure that we have good jobs, that medical and pension benefits are taken care of, and that we are investing in infrastructure and in education and all these other things that we need to be taken care of. Basically, we need to reinvest in the middle class. The second issue is we need to resolve the war on terror. And I can go into that in more detail later. But and then the third thing, and this is the most important thing, is all of these problems that we have, nothing is going to get done, nothing is really going to change until we fundamentally change the way the business is done in Washington. And in order to do that, we have to take a hard look at the role of money in the election system and the way that the relationship between that money, the politicians, and the media. And that's basically the main thing that this campaign is focusing on. Our watchwords, our platform slogan is transparency, integrity, and accountability. And we're trying to bring that not only in the way that we're conducting the campaign, but also in the technology that we're using and the way that we're giving people access to what we're doing.
Okay. And how do you see your experience going toward resolving those three issues that you named? Are there any policies specifically that you would propose?
Well, in terms of my general experience, I have a pretty eclectic sort of life experience. I was an intelligence analyst in the Army for 5 years. I was in Germany during the fall of the Berlin Wall. Later, I was in Korea during the Gulf War. After that, I traveled around the Mediterranean for a little while, went to technical school here, and I ended up working in the international wireless business at the height of the dot-com boom. So I saw the absolute best and worst of capitalism during that time. After that, I started my own video production company. We shot a documentary in Syria in 2004. I've spent some time in Israel. I've also been to Syria, obviously, and other places in the Middle East. I have either traveled or worked on every continent on the planet except for Antarctica at this point.
Kind of hard to work on Antarctica.
Yeah, they got cruises though. I'm looking forward to that. Well, it's gonna be cold, but
I have a friend whose father traveled with his father because it was the last continent he hadn't been to, and they went on one of those cruises. And from what I understand, had a pretty good time. You take the cruise to travel, and you stay there at night, and then venture on during the day. So that makes sense to me. What's your feeling about the? I'm sorry. Did you have anything? You talked a little bit about economics, but
specific policies.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, when we go back to the first thing with the election reform, aside from trying to establish a new level of transparency with what we're doing with the video footage and everything, specifically, I would like to see public financing of elections, not as a replacement to private money, but as an opportunity to give smaller party candidates or other party candidates an opportunity to get their voice heard. And then the other initiative on that side is that we need to just generally clean up the way that we regulate the election process as a whole. We need to look at the 527 groups and that sort of thing. On the economy, again, it's a matter of there is a sort of fundamental shift that's happening now in the public discourse, and that needs to happen in terms of how we talk about the economy. We're sort of stuck in this mode of how we talk about the economy as if there's some eternal struggle between capitalism and socialism, when the reality of modern economics, at least since the post-Depression era, you could arguably go back even further, is that you always have a mix of government and private initiatives that define the economy. So the question when we're talking about issues like taxation and government investment in the infrastructure, it's not a matter of ending capitalism going towards some sort of extreme of socialism, but recognizing that there's a balance. And in that regard, I think one of the first things that we have to face, and this is unpopular for a politician to say, is that the government needs more revenue. The federal government needs more revenue. And so we have to look at changing the tax policy. We have to repeal the Bush tax cuts. We need to figure out a way to make sure that corporate taxes are actually paid in this country. In theory, corporate taxes are around 37%. In practice, it's actually less than 2%. So that's got to change. And it's always difficult when you're campaigning to go out there and say that somebody's got to pay more taxes. But the reality is with the federal government, at this point, anybody who's campaigning and saying that the federal government can cut taxes is either fooling themselves, trying to fool you, or incapable of basic math. With the commitments that the federal government has right now, with the bailouts, with the extensive military empire that we're trying to set up overseas, again, going to the war on terror, talking about the commitments that we have in Afghanistan and Iraq, there's no way that we can continue to fund the government at this level. We've got over $10 trillion in national debt. We're looking at a federal annual deficit that's approaching $1 trillion this year. That has to change. Not only do we have to cut spending, but we have to raise revenue. And I think the area that we can best cut spending is in the area of our largest expenditure, which is the military. And this sort of comes back to the war on terror. I think that we are fundamentally pursuing this problem in the wrong manner. Terrorism, terrorism is always going to be a threat. As long as individuals or small groups of people have the capacity to do damage to a lot of people, that threat's always going to be there. And we need to deal with this threat for what it is. It is a problem for the law enforcement and the intelligence communities to deal with. And the situation that we have now is we are looking at specifically the Islamist threat, and we've, through the politics of fear, we've politicized this problem to the point where we're not actually going after the root causes of terrorism, where we've created this sort of self-perpetuating cycle of militarism, which is only creating more fanatics and more problems. And so we need to find a way to actually resolve the economic, political, and diplomatic underpinnings of this crisis in the Islamic world.
Okay. Kind of shifting gears a little bit, what's your feeling about the $700 billion rescue package passed by Congress? And if you were actually in office, how would you have voted for it?
I would have voted against it.
Both versions?
Both versions, yes. And the reason for that is we have an economy right now that got to the place that it is because of the relationship between big business, big money, and the government. And we have some very fundamental problems with our economy. Essentially, when you look at things like fractional reserve banking and the way that the Federal Reserve operates, what we have is we have an economy that is based almost exclusively on creating more and more debt. And anybody who's ever had too many credit cards at home knows that as you get more and more debt, you get more and more interest, and eventually your ability to keep up with that debt and that interest fails. And the problem that I have with the bailout package is what we were doing in both the original form, the form that passed, and then later the way that we actually bought the preference shares in the banks. The problem I have with it is that we are just dumping more money into that exact same system.
Okay. My next question is, I've read on your website up a little bit and saw that your religion is Islam, and I'm wondering if that's been a issue for you in the campaign at all. I mean, obviously a lot's being made right now in our presidential election, and I'll let you take it from there.
Interestingly enough, no, it hasn't been a problem. And I think that's to the great credit to the people of this district.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that I look at the fact that I'm a Muslim is I look at that as a strength in this race. Because we have to show, not only to the people in this district and the rest of the country, but to the people around the world, the true strength of America is in our diversity. And when we go out to all of these political forums, unfortunately Connie Mack is never there, but when we have myself, Senator Saunders, and Mr. Neild up there, we have a Muslim, a Jew, and a Christian. And to me, that speaks to what's best about America. And that's important, because when we talk about spreading freedom and democracy in the rest of the world, particularly in parts of the world where they're suffering through sectarian and religious violence, we have to show that no matter what our personal relationship is with God, that we can set that aside and all come together as Americans for the common good of the country.
You've talked just a little bit briefly about your service in the Army, and I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, what your service was like and how it kind of informs, I guess, your worldview now.
When I was younger, I was very gung-ho, and actually the reason that I joined the Army was because I wanted to go into Special Forces. I saw that unconventional warfare was going to be the wave of the future. I went in as an electronic intelligence analyst. I spent about 2.5 years in Germany when the Berlin Wall came down. And that was a really profound experience for me, because I had spent all that time there looking at East Germany as nothing more than a name on a map. And then towards the end of my tour, I went to Berlin. And for the very first time in my life, I actually got to meet Russian soldiers. I met the flood of East Germans that was coming over the times. And what I recognized is what a colossal human failing the Cold War had been. We had allowed ideological extremism to blind us to the humanity that was there on both sides. And what I came to recognize is that if the people of West Germany and the people of East Germany, or even the people of Russia and the people of the United States, were actually able to get together without that ideology in the way, that we would all come to common ground. And so I sort of made a personal vow that day in Berlin that I would never ever let that happen again. And I think that when we look at the more extreme Islamist views in the Middle East and the more ideological extreme views that we have here in the United States, they're trying to create that same divide again. And what we've got to recognize is that this isn't about America or Islam. It's not about Republicans versus Democrats, left versus right. It is about the majority of us who can get along somewhere in the middle, facing off against the extremists. And the extremism is the problem that we have to face, be it on our side, their side, or whatever.
My next question was going to be very much along those lines. One quote that I read of yours on your website was, "I realized the profound folly of ideological obstinateness." And it sounds like you very much answered my question. I was going to ask if you can give me examples of where you've seen it since, but you mentioned both Christian and Muslim extremism. I mean, is there anything else that you wanted to add along those veins?
This is something that we've come on the campaign the last couple of days. Is I have, basically because I'm running with no party affiliation, is I've tried to stay neutral in the presidential race. But as of Monday, I officially came out in support of Senator Obama. And a big reason for that support was the fact that the McCain-Palin campaign seems to have devolved into this campaign of fear. And I think that's a very real example of how an extremist ideology can be used to divide us against each other, when at this point, with all the problems we're facing, we need to work on a greater unity.
Okay. Are there any committees that, if elected, you'd like to be a part of, that you think that your experience could contribute to, especially?
I think the best contribution I can make is in the area of foreign policy. I would love to have Representative Mack's committee seat on the Foreign Relations Committee. Particularly this is an area I really like to work on, particularly when it comes to Middle East policy.
Okay. And are there any priorities that you would set, whether it be on the Foreign Policy Committee or another?
Well, there's one thing that I've learned just from the campaign trail this year. With everything that's going on, we've sort of chasing our tail, going from one crisis to the next. So it's really difficult for me, even in October, to look at January and say exactly what priorities I could set would be on a day-to-day. But my most fundamental underlying priority is always in creating a means by which we can see how the process works and give the people more access. So if elected, my very first priority is going to take what we're doing with the internet and the video footage and everything, and refine that into a more functional system where we have as much direct access to me as a congressman and to the goings-on in Washington for the people of this district as possible.
So it sounds like you're talking about, videotaping some of these committee meetings. Is that?
I would love to videotape everything that I do in Washington. I'd be happy to have a webcam in my office. Every committee meeting that I go to, if there's no national security issues, I'd like to have the camera there. Every meeting with a lobbyist, I want a camera there.
Okay. Where do you stand on the earmarking process? That's become a bit of a hot topic, particularly with people talking a lot about the bridge to nowhere. We've of course got the Coconut Road earmark in this area. Where do you stand about it?
I've taken a pledge to not seek any earmarks as a congressman for this district, and I think that's real important because everybody is talking about fixing the earmark process, but my opponents in the race, when you ask them about it, they will still seek earmarks. Now the question is if you recognize that something is wrong, how do you fix that problem while still contributing to the problem? So yeah, I've pledged not to seek any earmarks, and it really is, it's a very small portion of the overall appropriations that go on, and I think that what we need to focus on is cleaning up the appropriation process itself. To that end, there's a lot of things that we can do. One thing that we've talked about in this past year, and something that I would certainly like to revive, is interest in a line item veto.
Okay. This is a question that I ask everybody. Is there anything in your personal or professional life that you may not be proud of, or that you think people should know about you when they're going to the voting booth? And also, does that have any bearing on your service, in your opinion?
Everybody has demonstrated bad judgment in their life. Everybody has made mistakes, and I've certainly made no secret of some of the mistakes I made in my past. I've written about, I had some legal problems, which I've written about on my website. I went bankrupt. I went through a personal bankruptcy, and that experience in particular really informed my understanding of the need to stay out of debt and to not spend more money than you have, and I think that's important now. But when you talk about somebody's past, or you talk about, for example, someone's religious affiliation, the question that you have to ask is how is that going to inform their judgment in office? And all of my mistakes, all of my good experiences, everything that I've done in my life has made me the person that I am today. And I think this is who we have to. This is what we have to consider when we're electing somebody. We have to look at who that person is today, and what they're going to do today in office. Could have been a better soundbite.
This is one of my favorite questions. What sets you apart from your opponents? This is kind of your opportunity to make your pitch. What is it that would make you a better representative of this area?
Well, there's two things. First of all, everybody who's running for office, particularly those of us who are running against an incumbent, we like to say, hey, vote for me, I'm going to go up there, I'm going to change everything, I'm going to fight corruption. The question is how do the people of this district verify that? And the first thing that distinguishes me is the fact that I am offering a practical means to verify everything that I do and say, not only as a candidate, but as this district's congressman. The second thing is we are truly at a transition period in history. I don't think, in my lifetime at least, there's never been such a clear mandate for change. And the kind of changes that we have to make isn't simply a matter of a little legislative tinkering here and there. It's a matter of the fundamental philosophy of government and of society. And I don't think that any other candidate is really looking forward to America's role in the 21st century, not simply as a superpower, which I think is a role that we have to understand we can no longer fulfill. That the age of superpowers is gone. We're entering into an age where America is going to be one nation among many, and America will continue to be a world leader, but we have to lead through the courage of our convictions. We have to lead based on the principles of our Constitution. We have to be the exemplars of human rights, of economic justice, of democracy. We have to set the best example. And in the 21st century, there are a lot of new challenges to the way that we do that. But I believe that I am the only candidate that is looking forward to the future, not just addressing the problems of the past.
Okay. And is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want to address? I mean, any policy decisions or priorities or anything like that you want to get out there that I haven't asked you about?
There is there is one area that underlies everything that, unfortunately, because of the way we're chasing these crises, I don't get to speak to as much. But we have to restore the role of the Constitution in government. We have to restore the fundamental civil rights that have been eroded, particularly in the last 8 years, and we have to restore the constitutional system of checks and balances between the branches of government. This is an absolutely fundamental thing that has to happen, and it underlines everything, whether I'm talking about foreign policy, economic policy, or improving the election system. All of these things go back to the Constitution. And I think the real genius of that document was that it was designed to protect the American people from ever having a hereditary political class ruling over them. And that's what we need to keep in mind when we go to the polls.
Can you give me any examples of what you're talking about in which civil rights and the checks and balances have, I guess, fallen back in recent years? I mean, it sounds like you have some very specific examples in your mind.
Well, first of all, we have a presidency that's way too powerful, and this has been a trend that's been building actually since the FDR administration, and I think it sort of came to an unacceptable head with the Bush administration. The founders of this country basically wanted to make sure that we didn't have a ruling class that was always marching up Assad to war, that was always imposing their economic priorities over the finances of this nation. And I think over the last 60-something years, we've gotten to the point where we have more of an imperial presidency, where the legislature doesn't have as much control and as much say over what's going on in the course of this nation as they should, and that needs to change. There are several specific instances. We can go back to specifically some of the things that passed in the Patriot Act. The possible suspension of habeas corpus is a problem. The fact that very quietly over the past 8 years, the federal government has instituted laws that allow them to essentially suspend state and local control over their own states and over their own people. One thing that concerns me greatly is we have, for the first time, we have an active military combat brigade that just came back from Iraq up at Fort Stewart. It's the 3rd Infantry Division, which is set to respond to any crises that come up in the continental United States. Now, this may not sound like a bad thing if you're thinking about disaster relief or something like that, but part of their mission description is also crowd control and acting against terrorism and political subversion. And this is a scary thing. and this is something that we have to watch out for. It doesn't mean that America has turned into a fascist state, but it means that we have created the tools for a future government to take over much more of our lives than the founders of this nation ever intended. And I don't want to sound like a black helicopter guy.
No, it's fine. Just trying to keep up with what you're saying. Okay, those are all my questions, except my last one, which obviously isn't an interview question, but on election night, I'll be, following the results and hoping to get reaction from you and your 3 opponents. So is there a number that will be best for me to reach you at, as those results start rolling in?
Let me give you a couple numbers.
Okay.
Our office number is
Mhm.
334-7652.
7652.
My cell phone number is 851-9854.
9854. Okay.
And what I hope to do is I hope to be broadcasting live.
Oh, really?
Online.
Okay.
As the polls close, we'll go ahead and go up live.
Sure. Make it a lot easier for me if everybody did that.
Make it a lot easier for everybody.
Yeah. It's heck sometimes on election nights trying to get a hold of everybody. Okay, great. Well, it was a real pleasure talking to you. This will be running Monday.
Okay.
We expect. So you've got my email and everything. If there's anything that you think of that we didn't cover and you want to get in there, then just send me an email.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. There is one thing that I do just want to add real quick.
Sure.
This race is being portrayed as between the 2 Republicans, and Senator Saunders has made it a point of saying that we're the only 2 viable candidates in this race. Congressman Mack has sort of shown his contempt by not getting involved in the election process much at all. But the reality is, this is a 4-way race, and the winner of this race could be a person could be the candidate with 25% plus 1 vote. And I just want to encourage everybody to vote not along party lines, but to vote on the issues, because if you vote your conscience, your vote will never ever be wasted.
It is going to be an interesting race. A very interesting race. Great. Wonderful.
Thanks a lot.
I appreciate it.
Would you like us to hold back putting this video until your story comes out?
It doesn't matter that much.
Okay.
I have no objection personally. So if you want to put it up tonight, that's fine.
Okay. Well, I'm a little behind, so it might be a couple
Sure.
nights, but
Sure, that's not a problem.
okay.